we're such a culture now of instant gratification that we think that if it doesn't happen immediately, if it doesn't happen quickly, it's not going to ever happen, or we're not doing it right, or we're not doing it well enough. And it's like, no, guess what? It might take you 10 years. It might take you 20. This journey you're on, it might take you the rest of your life. The things that you're supposed to be doing and the person that you're supposed to be becoming, she can't become who she's supposed to become without these bumps and bruises and challenges and hurdles and joys and celebrations. Like all of these little things create this beautifully lived life and this beautifully formed person at the end of it, right?
Welcome back again to another episode of the Confident Mompreneur Podcast, where we talk to real women from around the globe about real life difficulties and triumphs in momhood, business, relationships, health, and more. I'm your host, Kyrie, ready to give you real actionable advice to help you become the best, most confident version of you in all areas of your life. Let's get into it. Well, welcome on today, Gina. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me over.
We just talked to each other like a couple of days ago. So we get to do it all over again. But this time she's in the hot seat because she interviewed me for her podcast. So I'm so excited to get to know you a little bit more and hear more about your story. So for those who don't know you, do you want to start out by introducing yourself, a little bit about you, your family, what you do, all the things?
Absolutely. My name is Gina Trimmer. I am the travel mama from Pure Imperfection on Instagram. That'll come up later. And I am now a podcast host and women's community grower over at Revitalize Womanhood. And our story began in the it was technically the 2008 recession, right? It started in 2008 and worked its way through the country it finally hit us here in Southern Utah about 2009, 2010, and we lost everything. We were living high on our hog in the construction boom, just like 25-year-old kids just making money hand over fist and spending it the same way, and interest only loan house, because that was genius. That was a great era for all of us doing the interest only things, putting everything on, financing everything just so we could have the cash to play with. And that just cut the rug, the rug got pulled out from all of us, cut our legs out from under us. And there we were. So we were 25, 26 years old and lost our house, lost all our cars, everything that we had. And I was 7 months pregnant at the time and had to we're lucky enough to move into, I should say, into my husband's grandparents' basement. And from that moment, it was now I can look back at it as a blessing, right? I can think that was the best thing that ever happened to us, because talk about a kick in the teeth to make you really sit down and not only communicate with your spouse and say, what do we actually want out of life? Was what we were doing what we actually want to do versus how do we want to live? And B, this is never going to happen to us again. We will never be in the position where this is something that could happen to us again. And did I say when we moved in there, I was 7 months pregnant with our first baby. I was working as an emergency dispatcher for the county here. And they were also on a payroll freeze. So, making $14 an hour. This was low. Okay. So the only income we had was $14 an hour. But it just what it was. It was what it was. And we were able to communicate with each other and say, hey, this is not how we want to live anymore. And within 6 years, you guys can go over and listen to it in detail over on my podcast. It's back about a year ago. I recorded with my husband and we tell our whole story in detail, but it took us about 6 years, and we ended up leaving the country in 2017 with one-way ticket to Paris with our 2 little boys. And we've traveled the world since then for 7 years, over 60 countries. And here we are.
Yeah. So amazing. I think that's so cool. And we met at like a training with a bunch of other, women in business primarily, and we connected, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to hear more about her because like what a cool story." And I'm sure like in that moment when you guys basically lost everything, it was completely devastating. You didn't know which way was up, like there's so much going on, but then to like be like, we're just gonna take our kids and move halfway across the country. How did you guys like make that decision? And how did you guys like, was there a ton of like fear involved in making that decision?
You know what? That's actually a good question, the fear factor, because so in my community here, my private coaching community is called the Revitalized Sisterhood. It's inside the Revitalized Womanhood umbrella, basically. But I do a monthly topic each month, and then we read a book that corresponds with that monthly topic. Like last month was April showers, right? Digging into our limiting beliefs and all the things. And it was The Mountain Is You, Brianna Weiss, that book about self-sabotage. And this one month we did fear and this great book that went along with it. And for me, I don't know why, but fear isn't a good or a bad thing. If you can take the label off of what fear is and just recognize it as it is just what it is,
Hmm.
it's just you being uncomfortable, really. Fear is just you being uncomfortable or not understanding what's going to happen next, right? We're not afraid of things that we know what's going to happen because we've experienced it, so we're not afraid of it. So we got into this conversation. It was really interesting because I've never had that feeling. Like I've never been
That
afraid.
negative connotation
Yeah,
with
that
fear.
negative, like for
Yeah.
me, fear is like an adventure. For me, change is an adventure. I see things as, and I grew up completely running around the neighborhood, never at home. My parents never knew where I was. I mean, from the youngest age of 5, I would leave the house, tell nobody where I was. I actually just did a post about this today on Instagram, and it was my memory from childhood was climbing a tree and building a fort in a tree that was next to an irrigation ditch next to the cemetery by my house. And that probably goes back to from being born to the age of 5. I lived on my grandparents' farm, like their farm and their farmhouse was over here. And then across the field was my parents' house. And then the railroad tracks went along, And so I would, from the time I could walk until we moved out of that city when I was 5, would just walk back and forth along the railroad tracks. Can you imagine letting your 3-year-old, 4-year-old just go to grandma's house along the
Yeah.
railroad tracks? Like, that's crazy, but that's the difference in what, you know, childhood now is versus what childhood was then. But
Mhm.
back to fear. So I just never had that feeling. So when we lost everything, it was kind of for me like, oh, well, I wasn't raised with much. I've got 7 brothers and sisters. My mom grew up on a farm. She has 5 brothers and sisters. They made their own clothes. They lived off the land, very humble, and then when she moved with my dad, all of us to the big city, which was not the big city, right? It's a suburb of Salt Lake. It's not a big city at all. And we were always raised on a one income family, food from the garden. She sewed
Mhm.
all of our dresses for dances and wedding dresses and whatever. We were raised with very little as far as materialistic things go. So when we lost everything, I was just kind of like, eh, right? Like I didn't have
I'm
it
just going back
before.
to my roots. Yeah.
Right, right. So it wasn't
Yeah.
that devastating for me. The bad part about it was hard to watch was my husband, and I could see some things which I kind of talk to him about now that he didn't recognize was happening at the time. And he went into a full on depression. Like he
Mhm.
would just lock himself in his office and play Call of Duty and just would not talk to me. And here we were kind of like when it started, we were still kind of in the newlywed phase. I wasn't pregnant yet when it all started, and he would go lock himself in there because he said every time he went to the mailbox, it was another notice of you're losing this or you're going to lose that or you know, and so it was pretty much thankfully we both had the ability to just kind of say we've got to at least get to the next step. Like, what's the next step? Okay, here we are. We're base camp in a basement. I still have a job that has income. What do we need to do? And what's the next step? So we were like $650,000 in debt because of the business. And
Jeez.
we couldn't go bankrupt. Like everybody at that time was just like, I'm just gonna go bankrupt. Like we probably would have. However, our loans were all tied to his parents' 50-acre ranch, which you just saw. I was up at their
Mhm.
property. And so we couldn't. We had to pay all that money back. And when you have cars repossessed, they they don't just take them and boom, you're free of the loan. They take them and they say, okay, the difference between what you owe and what this car can sell at auction is this amount. Now, so for this, what you have a loan for this $80,000 truck, it can only sell for 50,000. You still owe 30,000 on this truck. You are now in debt this 30,000 with no truck. So when they repossess your property, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware. So we had all of this debt. But it was like, okay, what's the first step? The first step is let's figure out a way to get this debt lowered. Let's talk to them and say, hey, we can't pay this off. That's ridiculous. We have no money. This is how much we make. Here's the proof. Can you settle with us? Would you be okay getting some of your money instead of nothing? Right.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we did a lot of things that way. And I think the step by step of not what's in 5 years from now, that's too daunting. You can't even think like that because you're in such a hole. You have
Mhm.
to think about what can I do tomorrow? What's the one step I can do tomorrow and work towards in 5 years this will be paid off or whatever your goal is, right? Baby steps.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and you said a few things there that I think are really important, like fear. It depends on how you look at it. I always tell my son that we do scary things safely. And so we do a lot of like, what could be considered scary, dangerous things. Like we go hiking, just me and him. We go, hunting. We ride dirt bikes. We do a lot of those things that could be, not very safe if you don't do it correctly. So we always learn how to do things safely. And we talk about like each step and how we're going to make sure that we do that. And then it's about, facing those fears and going for it. Because every time you do it, you're going to get a little bit more confident. And I think the same thing goes for like the goal setting, like you're talking about when you're in those dark, deep places and you're just trying to like figure out a way to climb up. You can't look 5 years into the future. That's way too daunting. So it's like, how can we think about just finding that next one step to get us a little bit further? And then it doesn't seem so daunting once we've gotten one or two or three steps up, because every one just brings a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. With that one step, if you have something that you can focus on and even especially get out of yourself, get out of this, like all I'm doing is sitting here focusing on me and poor me and what's happening to me, is I'm not saying that some of these things that are happening to people aren't terrible. They are terrible. I have a friend who's she's a medical mom. She calls herself a medical mom and she's been on this journey with her sweet little boy. They're in Paris now. And he has been in and out of surgeries his whole life and he's 3, just like my little boy. And she has taken it upon herself to become kind of like a coach in a way to other moms going through these kinds of things that have to live in hospitals, that have to have watch their children go into surgeries multiple times in a month. And she talks about things like you have to come at this from a place of strength. You cannot go in here for your child and think that you're falling on your sword or you're wearing this badge of honor if you're not getting enough sleep at night. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you will be the worst person for that little baby. You have got to have as much sleep as you can possibly get. You have to have daily self care things like going for walks. You have to, so if you can look at, yes, I am in the thick of it right now, but what is one little thing, like one little thing that will get me to the next day, right? Like something that will bring you happiness and will over time progress into something bigger. But just if you can just hang on to that one little thing. My husband's my mother-in-law, I recorded an episode with her. Her name's Jan, and she lost her husband when they were 27 years old. and it was her high school sweetheart. And they just had this small town romance, and they moved away and they were in the military together. They experienced a lot of these like growth experiences, like a lot of things that should make you scared. She had 2 children and they moved to Korea, right? So a lot of things like that. Well, he passed away when they were 27 and she had 2 young kids and was 7 months pregnant with my husband. And she said that I used to scream into a pillow to just, I couldn't bear the kind of grief I was living through, right? This nightmare, this waking nightmare. And she said, I thought about suicide. And then I thought, well, I can't leave my kids here. So she said she would look at the clock and she would say, if I can just get through the next minute. And she would literally watch the clock tick for 1 minute. And she'd say to herself, okay, I got through that minute. I just have to get through one more minute. And it started turning into 10 minutes. It started turning into 30 minutes. It started turning, right? I mean, that's a long, long time to tell yourself, if I can just get through this thing. And we're such a culture now of instant gratification that we think that if it doesn't happen immediately, if it doesn't happen quickly, it's not going to ever happen, or it's not, we're not doing it right, or we're not doing it well enough. And it's like, no, guess what? It might take you 10 years. It might take you 20. This journey you're on, it might take you the rest of your life. The things that you're supposed to be doing and the person that you're supposed to be becoming, she can't become who she's supposed to become without these bumps and bruises and challenges and hurdles and joys and celebrations. Like all of these little things create this beautifully lived life and this beautifully formed person at the end of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's so interesting when you get past those like really hard, really dark points and you're looking back, you can see how that has impacted you positively in some way. And I know that's really hard with some situations, but there's always some sort of positive that comes out of it if you let it and if you're intentional in your movements outside of it. And I mean, thinking back on just like your journey, obviously all of those things that really were hard and really hurtful and like you guys went through a lot then led you into this beautiful journey of like then turning into traveling the world with your kids. And do you think that would have happened if those things had not happened?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe my husband and I wouldn't even be together anymore. I mean, you start going down
Yeah.
a lot of different rabbit holes with, because that opened up some communication for us, and he was doing some like the books he started reading, like the Dave Ramsey, to help us start budgeting, and
Mhm.
4 Hour Work Week and those kinds of things. And oh my gosh, we listened to so much Tony Robbins, but it was back in the day when he had CDs, like
Oh
his
yeah,
books
yeah.
were on CDs. And so we would listen to Tony Robbins on our car rides and stuff. It was so funny. And we were listening to those kinds of things, and those having those kind of authors and mentors for us, and maybe that wouldn't have helped. So he would come to me, and instead of what he used to say is, you need to be better with money. You need to stop spending, right? Versus Dave Ramsey talks about, listen, you can't come at someone like that. You can't come and put all this blame, all of your money mindset, whatever that may be, and put it on someone else. You have to have your own discussion, right? And then
Mhm.
when you come to someone else, you come to them and say, hey, we need to look at our spending. We need to think about our budget. We need, like, you have to make this a team effort. So I think that actually helped him figure out a better way to communicate with me, and in
And
return that,
act as a team, as
yes,
one
act as a
cohesive unit.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he would ask me my dreams. Like it kind of started with, because a lot of these women that I meet that come find me in Revitalized Womanhood and then join my community of Revitalized Sisterhood, the first thing I ask them to do, I have a program. It's a free 30-day email series on my website called the 4 Weeks to a Fresh Start. And it's basically a baby step walking you through how to craft a vision of what you want your life to be. And then with that vision, how to then create goals, tasks, objectives, and goals, and then tracking those goals and how to it's basically baby steps to setting goals, right? Which is
Mhm.
so interesting because especially moms, a lot of women I meet, they have been so lost in motherhood. And it's like, you're not lost. You're in there somewhere. You've
Mhm.
just allowed yourself to put all of these different labels on yourself. Now you're a wife, now you're a mother, now you're this, now you're that. And so you've kind of become this entity. So it's funny when you ask them to, even me, I'm not saying not it wasn't me as well, but when you ask them what their dream life looks like, it's like, huh, either nobody's asked me that or I haven't even thought about that for such a long time. So
Mhm.
when my husband came to me and said, what life do we want? It became with us, our life and our goal setting becomes a game of would you rather. So
Mm.
would you rather be here and, get stable jobs, 9 to 5s, and create a home for our kids that's like this lifestyle, which is
Basically
great, which
rebuilding
is
what we already had.
right, right. Or, and we want this. Or what if we thought about maybe this, that, or the other, and traveling we didn't even think about that. We couldn't even think about that when this was all happening. That didn't come till like 5 years later. But those were the conversations we started having with each other, right? And that's a lot of times you are not having those conversations with your husband. You are not having those conversations with your wife. It feels like
You're not having them with
they're
yourself.
yeah, with yourself. Exactly, right? You're not. You're
Yeah.
just allowing it's like I say, are you a passenger or a driver? Are you the leading lady in your life? Or are you the best friend sidekick? Like
Mhm.
what are you writing? What's the story that someone else is going to be reading? If your life became this book that someone could check out at the library, right? Or buy on Audible, and they're listening to your life on this Audible, is it a romance? Is it a comedy? Is it a romantic comedy? Is it a drama? Is it Snoresville? Right? I mean, what is it? What would these pages say? So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it would definitely, like I said, I definitely, I think you can have regrets. I love it when people are so woke and they're like, I don't have regrets because it's made me the person I am. It's like, you know what? I can regret going to Mexico with that group of kids and thinking, oh my gosh, how am I alive still? Right. I can regret something like that. But really, I think looking back is just kind of pointless. It's just pointless. It
Mhm.
it creates the inability to be present. Even looking forward, I think does that. I think if you get so lost in once I get there, I will be, or once I have this success, I will be happy, or once I make this much money, that will change my life. Like I think either way, if you're looking back, looking forward, they both make it so you're not able to live presently and intentionally in each moment.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I love some of the things that you said there. I feel like you get one of like two kind of responses when you ask people like what they actually want from life. And it's either that they've never really thought about it, or they have, they've never been asked that type of question. Or on the other side, you just get the keeping up with the Joneses response, like the
Yeah.
basic, like the basic bitch answer of like, "Oh, I wanna get married. Oh, I wanna have kids. I wanna have a house." Like, the very basic, like, "I just wanna have what the person next door to me has," type of thing. And I've found that we all have, like, our own true definition of success if we're able to, like, really look deeply inside of us and ask ourselves those hard questions and really, like, think about, well, does success actually look like money to me? Well, no, but that's what I've been told my entire life I should want. But what do I actually want? Well, I want what money can give me. I want to travel. I want to feel secure. I want to Like, we have to look at the deeper meaning behind the things that we want, I think, in order to, like you said, set actionable goals that will get us our true definition of success and not just that kind of keeping up with the Joneses success.
Right. I think it's really hard when we have such easy access to so many people. So many
Mhm.
people. Like if you think about it, when my mom was momming, when she was doing her thing, like raising her kids, she had to compete with Betty around the corner, right? Like her
Right.
casserole had to be better than Joanne's. Like she didn't know that there was all of these women all around the world doing all of these different things, living lives differently, raising their kids differently. Like we met a girl in Australia who's my age and she's got the same young family like us, but she was talking about her parents and they were like travelers. Her parents took her and her siblings in like a caravan and they just went traveling around. And it's like, I couldn't even have fathomed that. My childhood was so different than that because we were one income. We were like all shoved into a van, and a big trip was maybe going camping. I didn't even see the ocean until I was like 14 years old.
Right.
Right. So that is just unbelievable to me. But now we have access to everyone, everyone. So the comparing is unbelievable. It's just being shoved down our throats, shoved down our psyches, right? It's just these
Mhm.
little tiny bombs that sit in the back of our head. Like you can be the most confident person. I think about this all the time because when we say, "Oh, I don't care what they think." Oh, please. Everybody cares what somebody thinks. We just
Yep.
have different levels, right? Like I will not leave the house without mascara. I will not go to the gym without mascara. I don't need a full face of makeup. I don't need that ever. I can have my hair up in a messy knot. Like I can look like a schlep. I don't care about those things, but my level is mascara. That's where I draw the line, right? But so I obviously care. So I could go around saying, "Oh, I don't care what anybody thinks." I obviously do care. But like I said, with the comparing, it's just, I think the root is understanding that the problem lies within yourself, right? If you can figure out, and we're not trained this, like we're not trained growing up how to love ourselves. We're trained how to be mommies. We're trained how to be wives. We're trained how to be sweet and pleasing. And, you
Mhm.
know, our brothers are trained to be out in the dirt and mow the lawn and do rugged things. Like, so it's obviously different now. It's different now, but for us, we were conditioned. And so now having these kind of people pleasing tendencies, and if I'm not doing it like she's not doing it, I'm not doing it right. When all the while it's like, no, listen, if you know you, if you can figure out who you are well enough to be uh, to make decisions for yourself, right? And stand by them, to know what you want to say and say it proudly, to you can still be kind, you can still be sweet, but you don't have to say yes to everybody. You can have boundaries. You can, if you don't want to watch someone's kid, say no. It's fine. So many women come to me and they are stuck on this, "Oh, but I can't do that. It would hurt someone's feelings." Or they're so hung up about not wanting to say something, and I'm like, you know what? I'm a safe place for that. Come practice on me because I can guarantee you the whole time you are stressing about not wanting to hurt this person's feeling because you're going to say no, they're thinking, "Oh, she said no. Okay, I have to move on and find someone else." They don't care. If they care, they're their own problem and you just need to let them be their own problem. But a healthy person says, "Oh, no, no problem. Thank you. I'll go to the next person and ask."
Mhm.
Right? And so we've been conditioned all of these different things that we've never sat down and thought, "Well, how does Gina feel? Like, what do I actually think about that?" My friend, she actually started this with me, not started it with me, but how I met her was she was my very first, I guess we'll call it a brand manager. I don't know. And so she's going through last year, she got divorced. They were married for 10 years and she was on, Ryan's podcast. She was on Ryan's
Yeah.
podcast
Love.
and she was talking about how she used to be this kind of like wife where she loved doing these elaborate dinners every night. And I mean, she's no stay-at-home mom. She is an occupational therapist, so she has a full-time job. She has two cute kiddos. She's like full-time busy all over the place, right? But
Hmm.
she said, I used to make these elaborate dinners, and now that they're divorced, she looks back on that and she's like, I don't do that with me and my kids at home. I order a pizza, or we have cold cereal sometimes, or we make sandwiches, because I would rather spend time with them than be in the kitchen chopping. And she says, and I look back on that and I think, why did I even think I liked that? Why did I even think I liked being that person? Because she'd conditioned herself to think that's what she liked. So
Yeah,
we can even lie to ourselves. I mean, it's onions, ladies. You got to peel those layers. It goes deep.
it does. Yeah, especially when we've grown up in those environments, being conditioned by society, by religion, by our families, like
Right.
all of it. There's so many layers to it. So when you're working with these women and you're really trying to gauge, like, okay, what do you actually want? And how do we create really good actionable goals that allow us to stay rooted in where we're at right now, but also have some sort of goals for the future? Where do you start? Is there like journal practices you do with them? Do you suggest reading books? Like, where do you start?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of okay, so like say when I started the Revitalized Womanhood, I had never owned my own company, right? I had helped my husband start tons of companies, but I'd never started my own. And I didn't even know what a podcast was. Honestly, I swear to you, I didn't even know what a podcast was. So I had to figure out all these different things. So I actually sat down with my friend who was my brand manager at the time, and I said, can you help me make goals? Like, I don't even know how to make goals. I I've never had a business. I don't know how many members I should shoot for this year. I don't want to be low, because all these people that are coaching me are saying, don't be low. You have to have growth mindset. You have to be blah blah blah. You have to reach for the stars, or else you right. And I'm like, I don't
Right.
want to be like 500 members this year and come in with like 5 and be like, oh man, that was way off. So I had to ask for help. I did. And I think when they come into the sisterhood, like I said, I have the 4 weeks to a fresh start that's free on my website at revitalizewomanhood.com. And that is the very first step in creating your vision. And what it does is it starts the ball rolling. Like I said, you cannot expect to sit down at a piano and all of a sudden you're Mozart, right? You're throwing out these whatever, you can't just go out and run a marathon. You have to just let the process work. So when you start with that, it's just really to just start asking yourself the questions, start getting in tune with, oh, wait a minute. I'm allowed to think about something other than my kids. I'm allowed to think about something other than my husband. Oh, I am a woman. I'm allowed to think about my wants and needs, and that works in favor of my kids, in favor of my husband. So it's just
Mhm.
planting all of these little seeds of thoughts, really. I mean, and so after that's a process that gets repeated every 90 days. So we are quarterly goal setters in the Revitalized Sisterhood. So that process
Cool.
happens every 90 days. And they check themselves every 30 days to make sure it's like progressing in a way that they want it to. Otherwise, you kind of move things
Shift.
around, wiggle, shift, right? Have a little pivot and never change the goal. We don't negotiate with our goals, but and some of them are going for a walk every day.
Mhm.
Some of them are drinking more water. Some of them, I mean, right? It's so unique to what I want for my life is not what so and so wants for their life.
Mhm.
I love the concept of homeschooling. I would die if I had to homeschool my kids. Like, I
Yeah.
will find every other person. I will find a co-op. I will pay them money. I will bring them snacks and tools, but I will not, I refuse to do it. So, you know what I mean? Like, so my goals are different than my friend in here who is a homeschooler. They're different. And that's beautiful. But with each month, I create like the monthly topic, like I said, and a book that goes along with it. And it's usually, I mean, it is 100% a book that these women would normally never pull off a shelf, because I know, because I was that woman. When my husband, so we got to a point where we had 8 vacation rentals, and I quit dispatching, but just before I had my second son. At that time, we were able to, I could quit my job and then manage. And so I would manage and run and clean 8 vacation rentals that we owned. And I would listen to like fantasy fiction and like Twilight and like the Shannara stories and the Luck series. And right now, what is it? The Thorns and
Hack of
Roses. Yes, like I love that kind of stuff. And so my husband would be like, you need to read James Clear. You need to read Dale Carnegie. You need to read Tim Ferriss. You need to read. And I'm like, yuck, that sounds awful. I love these fantasy books. I'm living, but what was I doing? Like, that's almost like hiding from your life in these stories. You're like it's kind of like having a glass of wine at night. I'm not saying this is wrong, ladies. I have my glass of wine at night. I'm going to crack a high noon with one of my guests on May 7th here, because that's so on topic and on brand for her. But I'm saying there comes a point where you have to kind of say, wait a minute, am I diving so deeply into this other world? Am I having too many drinks? Am I going to the gym for too long? Am I going running for too long? Am I trying to hide from my escape from my what I've created? And it's like, you created it. You can change it.
Yeah.
So anyway, but now I read these books and I have my community read them. We read one every month, and it is authors like exactly who I just told you. And they are blowing my mind, blowing my mind. And I think, why couldn't I have started this sooner? I could have been this more expanded version of myself 2 years sooner. But you couldn't have been, because you weren't ready to accept it. Do you know what I mean? Like I wasn't anywhere in my journey where I would have been ready to accept it yet. So
you have to be in the right like mental
you have to just be patient with yourself. You have to just, so I think, yes, the 4 weeks to a fresh start is where we start, and it gets them in the right mindset. And then all of this other information that I just kind of add along the way, it's just like expansion, right? It's just helping you see things in a different perspective, in a different way. And hearing from the community aspect of it is incredible, because you have all of these different women I mean, my oldest is 78. She's incredible. Down to women who don't have kids, who aren't married, right? So everything in between. And we're all together in this common goal. I used to think like-minded meant, like, say the women here. And so have you ever seen, yeah, have you ever seen the Utah mom, Jane? She makes fun of the Utah moms. Oh my gosh.
But I feel like I would love her content.
Oh, you would love it. You would love it. It is so accurate. It is so accurate to the point that I didn't realize it, but we were in Australia, and one of the girls was saying, because she's LDS in Australia, and she was saying that she follows an account that's from Utah. And she's like, yeah, she has like 4 or 5 sisters. They're all blonde and cute, and they always wear like the same kind of clothes, and they all go to the gym together, and then they all go have coffee together. And I'm like, let me see this account. And she shows it to me, and they're not related. They're friends. They're Utah moms, right? So they all look exactly the same. It's like
exactly the same.
It's like the Truman Show or whatever. Oh, what is it with Nicole Kidman? That one. Anyway, they're all the same person. Utah moms, no, I can say this. I'm a Utah mom. Okay. I'm a brunette Utah mom. So I can say this. I don't fit the mold. But anyway, I'm like, they're not related. That's just a thing. And she pointed it out to me before I even recognized it. So where was I going with that? Jane, she just cracks me up. Oh my gosh. Where was I going with that?
We were talking about all the differences in the women in the
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So anyway, so I used to think like-minded meant we're the same religion. We come from the same background. We like the same things, right? I used to think that. Like-minded is a concept of we all want the same thing. We're on this journey together,
Mhm.
right? So it doesn't matter where we are in life. We're different religions, we're different ages, we're in different seasons of life, but it works.
Mhm.
Everybody in this community understands each other, and the harmony in it is just incredible.
Yeah. I love that so much. I just made a post this morning with just pictures of me with all of these amazing women in my life that I'm like super close to. And we're all so very different, like in every single way. We're, like we've got different ages, different ethnicities, different jobs, different like stages of life. And yet every single one of them brings something into my life that I can learn from them. I can grow, like they make me better in some sort of a way. And like you said, that just openness and willing to be taught by somebody who knows maybe a little bit more or has a different opinion than us, just that perspective that it gives us and the ability to shift our thinking. And I think that's what a true growth mindset is. It's not always like goal, 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 but like that openness to see what life and the people and things around us are going to bring.
Right. And accepting that just because someone doesn't live the same way I do or doesn't like the same things I do, great. That's cool. That makes them so much more interesting. That's so
Hmm.
much more interesting. I've traveled to over 60 countries and nobody is the same. Nobody. So like I said, that woman in Australia, my friend in Australia, so she is LDS. So for me, I think of what does that mean here in Utah? What does LDS look like here in Utah? And I'm not saying as far as a religion, I'm saying as far as the members of the congregation, right? And she's like, we're like a melting pot over here. We're from India, we're from Asia, we're from England, we're from all of these different things. She's like, it's a tapestry versus when you see communities, cultures that there's so much likeness,
Hmm.
it's not different. I used the example, the metaphor today in my leadership call, and I used it for leadership, but really it's for anything. And it's, imagine you're sitting at the Louvre and you're looking at the most beautiful painting you've ever seen in your life, and imagine all of the different hues, not even the different colors, but the different hues of colors that it took to create this masterpiece, this beautiful piece of art. And that is each of our lives, right? Each of our, it's, if we didn't have the person that liked traveling, we wouldn't have this hue of blue. If we didn't have the person that loved opera and singing and music, we wouldn't have this hue of orange. We would, right? It's just,
Hmm.
it's incredible that if you can find your authentic voice, you create part of that beautiful painting.
Yeah.
But if you just blend in and want to compare yourself and become whoever you're seeing on Instagram because you think that's better, then you just become their color and you don't stand out. You don't create
Hmm.
the picture. You become background noise. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think that's why like the community aspect of it is so, so important. Because if you surround yourself with the right kinds of people, you don't run into those comparison things. Instead, they like give you permission to like be yourself entirely. And I love that that's such a major component of you and kind of what you do with your like support for women.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I know we're starting to wrap this up here, but I figured I would let you give us any more tips, tricks, tools that you think is important to the mom out there that is like kind of in that place where they're stuck and they know that they're stuck and they don't know where to go from here, but they know that they're made for more in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are all made for more. It's like given to us. If you have a baby, you cannot even say this isn't true if you have a child or more than one child, really, because I have three and they all came from the same place. It's all
They're
the
all
same
vastly
ingredients.
different.
Yeah, and they are I mean, holy moly. One of them is going to be, he was created to be a very specific person. His brother was created to be a very specific, completely opposite person. He was made for his own special little journey. So, why can we see that in our kids, but we can't see that in ourselves? Like, it's in there. It's just we've buried it with all of this stuff that we've put, like, in front of ourselves, our limiting beliefs, our, oh, I can't do that as well as her, so I just won't even try, or perfectionism, and if I can't do it this well, I won't even try, or all the reasons, all the excuses. But if you have, and a lot of the women, when they first start the Revitalized Sisterhood, I say, why did you come here? And they're like, I don't know, I knew I needed something, but I don't know what that looks like. And then you just start. You go, like I said, to the 4 weeks to a fresh start. You start that free 30-day email series, and you just be open, be curious to what it brings up in your mind, what the thoughts are. And don't think of it as these are bad or these are good. Think of it as these just are. Like, you just be curious about what comes up. And then if that pushes you to the next step, then listen to more podcasts. And then where does that lead you? Okay, well, read a book. Did you hear about a book on a podcast? Read that book. Just, it doesn't have to be a leap. It just needs to be a step.
I love that so much. And I mean, you've done such a wonderful job of like illustrating that we don't need to be scared of our own thoughts or our own emotions. They're there to teach us something. And if we can really tune into ourselves and know ourselves at those deep levels, we just like get that opportunity to learn from each of those things as they come up and to grow and to be better in some sort of way, just in those small increments day by day as we take
Right.
it.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for this. This has been such an amazing conversation, and I'm so glad that we found each other and
Yeah.
now get to be on each other's podcast. So tell us where to find you, what the name of your podcast is, how to get involved in the Revitalized Womanhood, all the things.
You guys, it's so easy. I'm Revitalized Womanhood throughout. So podcast, Instagram, YouTube. Come check out website. Come check out Revitalized Womanhood, and you can find everything on my website as far as looking deeper into the Revitalized Sisterhood, our private coaching community. But I would say for sure, go do the 4 weeks to a fresh start. It's free. Sign up for the newsletter. It's me, just like these same kind of rambles and thoughts that I am very, very self-assured of. I just let it fly and come hang out with us. We have such a good time. And I would please ask all of you to do us the favor and rate and review this episode. And please go do it anytime you hear a message or a podcast that really moves you, on Kyrie's or on mine. It really does, like, amazing things. To just as simple as rate and review helps us out a lot.
Sure does. That goes for any small businesses out there, like liking a post
Oh
is
my
like
gosh.
huge, or commenting, or, sharing something that hits you like that.
I
Like, you
know
don't even need to spend money to support a
no,
small business.
I know we're wrapping it up, but I will leave you. This is a soapbox of mine. And for women that say they support women, okay, I would like you to have a little, like, intentionality challenge. And today, when you're hearing this episode, think to yourself, how have I supported another woman today? Have I shared her account on my own stories? Like, someone is out there doing something incredible. It doesn't need to be curing cancer. Some mom out there just freaking got her kids ready to go to church, for hell's sakes, and they made it out the door. That's that's amazing. That sometimes that's really hard to do. Like, it doesn't have to be these big, huge gestures, but I would love for you to ask yourself, go inward, set that intentionality challenge of, how did I actually support the people that I truly love? And see if you come out on top of that or on the bottom of that.
Make a change if you
And
need
then make a
to.
change.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for being on and letting me get to know you a little bit more. And of course, we'll stay connected. But thank you again.
Absolutely. Thanks, hon.
Hey guys, thanks for coming to this week's episode of The Confident Mompreneur. If you loved today's episode, let us know, share to your stories and tag us, send to your friends, give us a rating, all of the things, and make sure to check out our guests and follow them on all of the links that we listed above. If you're looking for me, you can always find me at The Confident Mompreneur, and you can also check it out www.theconfidentpost.com for a blog relating to today's episode. I am so happy you're here, and I hope to see you again next week.